Sorry, everybody, to be a few minutes late. If you all know me, it bothers me to no end to be late. I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. Can everybody hear me okay? I see some people. Yes, thank you. And going to share my PowerPoint slides, and we will get started. So thank you all. Happy November. Happy end of daylight savings time, which I'm not all that happy about, just because I do like daylight, but it is here. And so again, gonna find a way to still enjoy fall, but I hope everybody's clocks are adjusted and everybody's ready for the rest of November. As always, kind of following the same, schedule, same organization as previous extension connections. I'll do my updates for the first part of our time together. And then I've invited Kate Yerxa to join in around the 3:30 hour. I think it's really important. November does represent the 50th anniversary of the EFNEP program. So I thought it would be a great opportunity for Kate to share some of the program and what this all means to EFNEP and really be a part of this conversation. So that's what we're going to hopefully accomplish today. And at the end, as all organization or for Kate or whoever. I would like to mention one thing. I should have mentioned this to Angela and Sheila, who sit outside, but I always like to pepper the slideshow with some quotes, because I feel like if nothing else, a little inspirational quote is always great. And so I remembered a quote from Jack Welch, who was the former CEO of General Electric. And it was something along the lines of, every organizational leader leaves at the end of the day wondering if this was the day that he blew the place up. And I like that, because Friday actually represented my 6-month anniversary in this position, which is hard for me to wrap my head around.
Wow.
I know. So I Googled quotes on blowing the place up, and I just realized that now I'm probably on something about blowing up extension or blowing up organization. So if you read in the Bangor Daily News that I've been led away in handcuffs, it's because I want to watch about Googling blowing this place up. But moral of the story is, it's been 6 months. Extension is still standing, and I appreciate that very much. And we'll talk about not only October and what all took place in October, but also my first 6 months on the job. So I just like to do a rough overview of kind of what October looked like, and just mention a few things with that, because I think it's important. And again, certainly this slide does not capture everything in every meeting and everybody that I interacted with in October, but it does give some highlights, and there are some kind of next steps or places where I'd really like some input from you all. I did make it to the Freiburg Fair, and I think it was on October 1st, actually. I'd never actually been to the Freiburg Fair in all my years, and it was a great opportunity and a great connection. And it was awesome to see the 4-H youth that were there and represented. And it just seems like it's still a great agricultural fair. I do appreciate also the 4-H challenge that the Freiburg Fair does, and we did meet that challenge goal where they match the $10,000, over $10,000 that 4-H raised for that. So it was a great opportunity to be there. Planning on going again next year. So thank you all for those who have a hand in making the Freiburg Fair happen. We also hosted a retired extension personnel reception early in the month. And it came from actually some retired extension folks that I've actually met in the last few months, kind of mentioning to myself and to some other folks, like, why don't the retirees get together? And we do have quite a cohort of retired extension folks around the state. So I thank Susan Jennings for kind of taking the lead on this, and the 4-H Foundation actually hosted it here at the 4-H Science and Engineering Center. We didn't get that great of a turnout. And again, it could have been timing, it could have been location, seeing as though a lot of retirees are actually in the southern part of the state. But there was a great discussion, and this is where it's something that I would welcome some input from you all if you have some ideas of how do we keep retired volunteers, retired staff connected to what's happening in extension. So if you have any great ideas on that, feel free to shoot me an email and just mention them, because it was something that I certainly put on my list. And I do thank folks who send us an email of saying, oh, I saw so-and-so's obituary in the paper. I don't want to be a downer on that. Or did you know that this happened to so-and-so? And again, it's really just on an individual basis, but is there a way that we could try to capture all that's happening and share it with this retired network of folks? So again, I just mentioned that because I'd love to hear if anybody had some thoughts on how to best keep connected to our retirees. In October, I actually had the opportunity to host the Extension Leadership Team at my new house for our retreat in October. I'm going to have a slide on that coming up, so I'll talk more about that in a minute. I did finish my county office tour, and again, I will talk about that as well. This I was pretty proud of, and I take it as a big accomplishment of getting it done in October. And I'm glad now that I actually have a visual when we talk about our different offices of what they all look like. I was able to attend, and it was my own somewhat professional development. I also was presenting some things at the International Leadership Association meeting in Ottawa just 2 weeks ago. I've never been to Ottawa before. It's a beautiful city, and really actually probably took more from the conference than I thought I would, as far as what's happening in leadership in other organizations, and again, how can they be applied and those ideas be applied here. I am amazed that I have now had 2 snow days without any true snow, where the university has closed once for half a day, and then on Friday for the full day. This is very interesting. I never saw that when I was a student here, and just what it's like, again, when you come on campus without any power. The first time in mid-October, when we were closed for half the day, I was without power at my house, but came, and it was like 6:30. I was like, well, I'll just go to work. And luckily, Libby Hall actually had power for that whole time. So it was great opportunity to just actually crank out some things here. Friday was kind of the same thing, without power at home and without power on campus, but ended up still traveling to Augusta to go to a meeting. But I think it's fascinating that I've all shared with my friends in Florida that we've already had 2 snow days without any snow. On last Thursday, we did have a joint meeting between a lot of the agricultural, food science. We did have a couple of 4-H folks who represent Extension with the Bureau of Ag, and other folks from DACF. We had that in Augusta last week, and it was a great opportunity. We spent half a day together just sharing ideas and opportunities to collaborate and connect. And I think there'll be some other meetings moving forward that we certainly can engage a broader Extension audience in as well, as we think about partnerships between these 2 organizations. And just also to let you all know that Sea Grant is now at the end of Libby Hall. I always like to say they now have the better flooring, because when you walk in Libby, there's a fairly pretty clear where Extension stops and Sea Grant finishes with some of the work they did to renovate to get Sea Grant here. It's very nice having some new people in the hallway, and again, I feel like this will probably lead to some just increased collaborations and networking just because of the sheer fact that they're here. So if you're here in Libby and you happen to walk down the hall, feel free to introduce yourself to them. So then, oops, as I hopefully move my slides, which are not moving very well. There we go. So November 1 was my first 6 months on the job. As I mentioned before, I think it was either an Extension Connections 2 or 3. What I thought my timeline for this job was different than actuality. My first 6 months, as I mentioned, I have now visited every county office. I kind of did my own math and feel like I've probably met 85% of everybody that works for Extension. I know when I was at different county offices, some people were on annual leave or out doing programming or whatnot, so I don't feel like I'm at 100%, but I do feel like I've met a solid 85% of all the folks that work with extension. I think that's really important, and as I've mentioned this at these office visits, is as we are making decisions for either in regards to personnel or in regards to office space or offices or programs here in Orono, it's so important to actually have been in that office or met with those people or learned about those programs before decisions are made. So probably this is one of the things I'm most proud of. If people are going to ask what the first 6 months has been and what I can be proud of, it's again that I've visited all the camp and learning centers, and now that I've visited every county office and met with folks, and that I can't say that I'll be right every time, but hopefully now I can greet you as I see you out and about at other places, hopefully get your name right, and hopefully understand and remember what program you were with. I think that's most important priority of any organizational leader. Before Provost Hecker left, in one of my last check-ins with him, he said one of my goals for the first 6 months was to get a basic understanding of extension budgeting. And I feel like I've done that, especially during some tough budgetary times. And not only have I done that, I feel like I've had to articulate that to external groups, and whether that's stakeholder groups or other funding agencies or interested parties, I've had to share where our budgets come from and how they're derived. And certainly we've also now in the last couple months, more county extension offices are finding out about their county funding. Those meetings are happening and occurring. And so I think that's important moving forward. And I feel like, again, I accomplished this because Provost Hecker now is doing special assignments for the president. And one of his special assignments is looking at a new budgeting model for the University of Maine. And so he actually came into my office a couple weeks ago and he said, all right, teach me about the extension budget. And I was able to do it confidently, and I only had to double check 2 things with Dennis afterwards, and I actually got both of them right. So I feel like I'm on a good track. And even Jeff said, you know, you have a good handle on things. So I feel like that was really important, especially moving forward. Certainly the connections are important, and I still probably am saying yes to too many meetings and yes to too much, but I feel like it's important to, you know, when you get those invitations to go and again, meet the people who are around the table and make those connections and have extension be represented. I kind of looked at my calendar and realized I've probably spent 2/3 of my time outside of the office the last 6 months, and that'll get me to my next column of the next 6 months. Probably it'll be 2/3 of my time inside the office and less time outside, just because I really need to start thinking forwardly of what extension is going to look like moving into the future. And so I do obviously plan to continue to learn. I do want to work on those internal relationships with UMaine and the UMaine system and spend a little more time here versus out and about, which really coincides too with probably not ideal travel weather. And it's amazing to me to now get meeting notices with a snow day, because that's not been something that I've had to think about is, well, if the meeting can't happen this day, when is it going to happen? I do want to reiterate this, just because I've been to every office doesn't mean I've checked that box and now I'm not going to be, you're not going to see me again for another year or so. I would love to still be invited to programs, or if there's something that you would like me to participate in or keep me informed of meetings that are happening, please continue to do that, because I want to make sure not to lose those connections with the county offices. I'm also open to other thoughts and ideas now that I've spent a lot of time getting to know the organization. Are there other groups that you work with that you think I need to know, or that would behoove your program if I were there? Please share those with me and let me know, because I still want to make connections and still want to represent extension. So again, open to other thoughts and ideas and invitations. So please remember that. Okay, so let's talk about reporting and partnerships And I did not make a separate budget slide because I feel like this plays into the reporting and partnership slide. So first of all, let me just say thank you to everybody who turned in that partnership spreadsheet last Monday. We did have a few that came in a little after the fact, but that was okay. I think we got most all present and accounted for. This was a big thing, and Michael Bailey in Dennis's shop deserves a huge shout out because he got all the individual spreadsheets and compiled them, and Dennis worked on this too, and thank you, Dennis, for that, into the one spreadsheet that I turned into the provost last Thursday afternoon on time. The good news is we had 851 unique partnerships in that document. And so again, just to remind you, we were asked as the Dean's Group what the university's engagement was in communities around the state. And that's the question that was asked, and we had to report that information. And my goal, and Fred Cirella and I talked, and we knew we'd have individually, NSFA and Extension would have upwards of 500. We mentioned that in the meeting, and people looked at us like we were crazy. And so to turn in 851, I counted as a real win. NSFA turned in a little over 700. So again, it wasn't a competition, but we all know it really was. And I just want to say thank you all for that. The bad news of, and I had X percentage of Extension responded because I literally just, as you all know, since I was a minute late, came in from a meeting, and I asked Dennis to pull this number right before I left for my meeting. The bad news of this partnership document was we had about 53% of faculty and professionals respond to this request, which accounted for 35% of everyone. Everyone could have responded. It was certainly, again, just if the Extension office, if your program had a partnership. I know several programs collected information and sent it all as one, such as the EFNEP program, which was great. But we certainly didn't have everybody respond who could have. And I'm going to mention that as we go on to talk about the main planning and reporting system. You all got an email this morning from John Pritchard. Just so you know, again, 75% of folks have reported. Thank you for that. 22% have not reported at all. We do have some that have been given extensions. I mentioned both of these together because this is extremely critical right now with budgets being the way they are. And I'd like to tell this fun little story about when Hannah, now I'm going to talk about myself in the third person, when Hannah was an Extension faculty member and used to have to be chased down with nasty email messages. Usually the final one I would get from the John Pritchard at the University of Florida would be, Hannah, we are turning your name into the senior vice president if you do not get your report in by such and such a day. Because I probably, like many of you, had the thought of, I don't have time for this. How am I supposed to collect all this information? My program doesn't fit neatly into the reporting system, all of those things. So I would begrudgingly do it and just roll my eyes and be like, all right, that's time wasted. Now I sit in this seat, in this role, and I don't know how to communicate the importance of this other than to say, in December, we are going to get what our FY20 budget looks like. And it's not going to be pretty in that we are going to have another possible realignment that's the same or worse than this mid-year one that we just got. And the only way I can champion programs or people or all of the things that Extension does is if I have the data. And I mention this because at least once a week, we get requests from the president. We got one this morning from her that we were trying to fill by the end of the day today. And what we try to do is not bug you all and say, can we have this? We try to mine what data we have. We try to pull those impact stories out. We try to minimize the requests that we have on you all, which I know again, the last couple months that we haven't even been able to do that just because of this whole reporting partnership document that kind of came up out of the blue. So this is all to say, I get it. I know everybody's very busy and everybody has a lot of things on their plate, but please, when these items come up, please do them to the best of your ability. And especially with the impact statements, with the NPRS, those are going to be really important moving forward. So, and certainly if you have any questions or concerns or any of those things, please feel free to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to John, any of us, and we will try to help you the best that we can. One of the things that has come up in this last month, which I actually think is a great opportunity, is there is going to be a new learning management system as part of the University of Maine. It's called Brightspace. It replaces an old system. What is important is it's going to play a role in some of the extension programming that we're doing. Certainly, if we have future ideas, if you have future ideas of possibly being able to put one of your programs online, you'll be doing it in Brightspace. It'll be able to register participants who are not a University of Maine student, which has been a limiting factor before. It's going to be able to take in some money and hopefully integrate with some of our other systems. So what we are looking for is a group of individuals from Extension who would like to form a Brightspace working group. And all of what we are looking for is just a group who will work on how will this be rolled out to Extension. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning wants Extension's input as they are putting Brightspace online. So instead of, typically what happens is the university puts something like this in place, and then Extension is made to fit into it, and you all know this and have shared a lot of frustrations with this. But what they are actually asking for us is, let's get Extension's input at the beginning and consider Extension as we are considering how we implement Brightspace. So I think it's really a great opportunity. So what we would like to do is take volunteers if you have an interest in online or possibly online programs. Just send me an email. What we envision is probably this group will be informal. We'll probably get together via Zoom. It's not going to be a huge burden as far as time goes. What we'd really like is just for this group to help identify future issues and questions that may come up from Extension as far as what this learning management system could do or how it could operate. And then think about how potentially you could utilize this with your current or future programs. And again, thinking forwardly at what might be happening. CITL has asked for a couple of people from Extension to be on a committee right now to represent Extension just at that level. And so we've asked Jen Lobley, Mari Glatter, and Michelle Logic to represent Extension on that committee. So what we'd like to do is for the informal group of folks who are getting together is just raise kind of issues, concerns, opportunities, thoughts, and then we can share them with this group who will take them as they represent Extension on this university-wide committee. So again, happy to answer any questions that you all may have with this, but if you have interest in this, feel free to reach out just with your name and we'll put together this informal group. I do want to give an update on the video work proposals. Remember at the last Extension Connections, we talked about this, just this update. We did get about 30 proposals from folks. They were great. Thank you for that. Lisa and I are going through them and we're not ranking them whether they're worthy or not. They're all absolutely worthy, but just what we feel like is just with this first round, what could we accomplish with the amount of money we have with the group that we're working with that are actually going to be the ones actually doing the videos. And so what we hope to do in the next few weeks is identify that first group of projects to move forward. We'll see how the funding takes us for that first group, and then we may add additional projects. We may see how that all goes, and then see what we can do as far as the next round of projects goes. So that's all to say is stay tuned, but thank you all for those that did submit some video project work to be done. We're going to try to do as many of them as we can with the amount of money we have and start kind of clearing out some of these proposals and get some of this video work done. So thank you so much for all of that. I mentioned I did host the ELT retreat, which is going to lead to work that's going to be done at the organizational meeting, which I'm going to talk about in a second, that's really going to get to Extension's greater good. One of the things I did want to mention at the ELT retreat is we are going to undertake a new format for our ELT meetings. And that is going to come in two ways. We typically have, as you all know, a big long 6-hour meeting, and we have this big long agenda, and sometimes we get through it, sometimes we don't. And so what we have decided to do is, and you'll notice this we had an ELT meeting on the 30th of October, last Wednesday. So when you see the minutes of this meeting, you're going to notice that they're going to be reformatted in a way into 4 sections: decisions, updates, focus, and advice sought. Because we realize everything that comes before the ELT can be in one of these categories. And so hopefully this will help the flow of the meetings go a little, I don't want to say better, because I think the conversations have always been good. It's just, again, when somebody brings something to the ELT, what are they looking for as far as an outcome to that? So that's just to give you a heads up of why the agenda or why the meeting minutes may look a little different if you do read those meeting minutes. One of the things I challenged the ELT with, we did have a guest speaker at the retreat who kind of really challenged, I think, the group to think about the future of Maine, the future of the university, and the future of Extension, and what Extension's role and place is. And it was a very positive conversation, and one that I want to carry forward through to the time that I have on the agenda for the organizational meeting. If you all like a good TED Talk, like to watch something as you're sitting at your desk, probably eating your turkey sandwich, that's what I had for lunch today. That's why I was thinking about it, because it's still sitting here on my desk. But Simon Sinek did one of the most popular TED Talks ever done. And it surrounds, or it's under this premise of what is an organization's why? Why do we do the things we do, whether as an organization or as a person? And so this is a 15-minute TED Talk if you have interest, but I'm going to use the basic tenets of it at the organizational meeting to get us to begin to talk about what is UMaine Extension's why. Why is it that we do the things we do? And we're going to do this as a group. It's going to be a big discussion. Hopefully we generate a lot of flip chart paper from it. But this is then going to lead into the discussion of how do we address this why moving forward as an Extension organization. I mention that now because maybe you'll have a chance to watch the TED Talk prior to our organizational meeting. Maybe you won't, but at least you'll have this thought in your head of why do you think, what is UMaine Extension's why? And again, there is no one right or wrong answer in this, but I'll be interested in getting folks' input on that. So again, there is going to be some really good group work, hopefully, at our organizational meeting, which I do want to mention. It is coming up next week, next Wednesday and Thursday here on campus. As of this morning, Fran mentioned that we have 138 registrants, which is not 100% of the organization, certainly. You still, while registration is closed, certainly we're not going to turn you away, but if you did have some indication that you were coming and you were not registered, please email Fran ASAP, just because we do have to give final meal accounts. I mean, probably today or tomorrow, soon. So again, if you haven't registered, please do so. Please consider attending. I know that last week they did send a donation form out for silent auction items. Please get something. If you have something to donate, please contact Holt Knight. And I know there was another email that went out. If you have slides that you would like to share, again, please send those to Jason Lilly, I think by next Tuesday, I think the date was. Just real quick, I'm going to wrap up here quickly and then turn it over to Kate. What does November look like? As I mentioned, I was actually looking at this week. It's the first week, I think, in probably at least 2 months, if not longer, that I am here in my office every day this week. So again, I'm going to focus on being here a little more. Certainly budget discussions are going to ramp up. There is a budget forum tomorrow. I encourage you, if you have an opportunity to do so, to participate. I am planning on going. Again, the more information that we get, I think will be crucial as we approach this FY20 budget. On Friday, we've got 3 hours of the interim provost's time. We certainly can't teach her all about extension in 3 hours. As I said, we're going to go about an inch deep and about 5 miles wide with her, and just do a very quick tour of a few programs and people that are close to campus just because of our time constraints. What I'm hoping is that we get another day or two with her moving forward, that we can get her out and about to visit a county office, to visit some of our programs around the state. I think that's going to be crucial. Right now, we have not heard of any movement forward as far as the hiring of a permanent provost, so I'm going to assume that Dr. Gilbert will be the interim provost for at least the next year, because it would take that long once they do start the search process for a new provost. So the more that we can school her at extension, the better off we'll be. Next week on the 12th is the Board of Ag meeting. That is here on campus as well. And again, that is the legislatively decreed group that really, really informs not only Fred Cervello as the dean, but myself in extension, what the needs are of agriculture as a whole around the state, makes recommendations. It is my first Board of Ag meeting, and I've already started preparing for that. Obviously, we have our all organizational conference next week as well, and I look forward to seeing a lot of you there. And then it is the beginning of the holiday season, which is just hard for me to wrap my head around, especially again, that I've been here for 6 months. With that, I always like to add a personal note, because I feel like it's important to get to know me as a person as well. Over the weekend, I did unpack my last box. My last moving box has been opened, and I can't believe it. I did get to go to an apple tasting a couple of Sundays ago. This is a picture of the table. There were several hundred apple varieties at this apple tasting. It was at the Blaine House, which was just a fantastic experience. And again, I had no idea there were so many apple varieties. I should have, but I didn't. Not only, as I mentioned, I did go to Ottawa for my conference, but I also, over the long weekend, that 3-day weekend that we had in October, I also actually traveled out to Cape Breton Island. So have gotten a chance to see a lot more of Canada than I ever did just growing up 15 minutes from New Brunswick. And then, as you can see from the picture that I added, my horses are almost home. They will hopefully by Thanksgiving weekend be in residence with me. I share this picture of my garage that is part garage, part barn. I like to call it the barrage. So with that, next, our last Extension Connections of the year will be on the 9th. Fran is going to join me. We thought it would be a great opportunity to just debrief the organizational conference and maybe talk about some HR things. The 6th will be the first Extension Connection of 2020. Please mark your calendars. I think I'm going to continue with these. They seem to be well received. I said I would try them for 6 months and then see. But I would love to have input and ideas for these moving forward. If you have idea for guests or topics that you'd like to hear about or hear from, whether it's internal to Extension or external to the university or beyond, maybe they need to be more than once a month. I don't know. I'm also conscious of people's time. And the other thing is, would you see if there would be any benefit if we would share these with external audiences, if other people would like to join in? Again, just open for discussion, and certainly feel free to share any thoughts that you have with that. With that, again, I haven't stopped to take a breath, but I'm going to now and stop sharing my slides so Kate Yerxa can connect with her slides. And I'd love to be able to turn it over to Kate now if you're ready. Thank you, Kate. I'm sorry I took over 5 minutes of your time. Feel free to use whatever you need to.
Thank you. No, I don't think I'll need too much time. So okay. I'll share my slides right now. Okay, so I'm hoping everybody can see this. Yes? Yes. Okay, great. So thanks for joining me, and thank you, Hannah, for giving me the opportunity to share some history and information about EFNEP. My plan for today is just to give a brief overview and history of EFNEP, introduce you to our UMaine Extension EFNEP team, review some of the educational priorities of EFNEP, who our audience is, and kind of share the difference that EFNEP is making here in Maine. And I will say, we also do have an opportunity to celebrate the 50th anniversary of EFNEP at the organizational meeting. So I'm trying not to do the same thing that we'll do at that meeting as well, just to keep things fresh for everybody. So here we have this first slide, and there's a key component, key bit of information here, and that is that EFNEP, or the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, is the nation's first nutrition education program. It's important to note that every cooperative extension service does deliver EFNEP, so we are a very large program federally. So what I've put together is a brief timeline and history of EFNEP for you. You can see EFNEP really was, really arose out of concerns that millions of Americans were living in poverty. They were being underserved, groups living in very rural or even urban areas that were going hungry. So we had hunger and poverty, and the current method to really support those groups was to distribute excess agricultural commodities at the time, but that was not meeting the needs of that population. So just distributing food was not changing behaviors, if behaviors could be changed. So between 1962 and 1967, USDA funded what are called Federal Extension Service projects in select states. We even had some New England states involved. And those projects focused on how to best reach, meet the needs, and teach low-income audiences. So there were specific state and county funded projects throughout those 5 years. And during this time is the time that President Johnson declared the war on poverty, and that was his unofficial name for legislation that he first introduced in 1964. In 1968, USDA Secretary Freeman toured many of those poverty-stricken areas where those Federal Extension Service projects were being initiated, specifically in Alabama. And so he followed up, he was very impressed with the work, and followed up with President Johnson and strongly urged the USDA to authorize or be authorized to proceed with what was called the Expanded Homemaker Program in 1968. And there were some funds released, initiated to create that program in 1968. And then in 1969, or federal fiscal year 1970, EFNEP was officially funded with an appropriation of $30 million under Smith-Lever Section 3D. And the intent of the program was based upon what was successful in those Federal Extension Service projects. And that was specifically to train paraprofessionals to reach the nation's poverty-stricken families and youth living in very rural and urban areas, and to give them, improve their knowledge, teach skills, change attitudes, and ultimately improve behaviors to have nutritionally sound diets, improve or contribute to professional development, increase self-efficacy, and improve the total family diet and well-being. So that was the premise of EFNEP in 1969. I think it's important to note that in fiscal year 19, the federal appropriation for EFNEP was just under $68 million. So there hasn't been an enormous increase in EFNEP funding in 50 years. And we still, that requirement or recommendation to use a paraprofessional model was based upon the success of those Federal Extension Service projects. It was considered effective, cost efficient. It wouldn't be an extension project if it weren't cost efficient, to reach and teach the primary audience of EFNEP, and those are families with children, families with young children specifically. So I did put a little timeline dot here in 2012, and that's because from 1993 to 2012, in addition to delivering EFNEP here at UMaine Cooperative Extension, UMaine also received food stamp nutrition education funding. So, or that was FESNY, or is now referred to as SNAP-Ed. And so what was done at the time is both of those federal funding sources were put together to create one nutrition education program, which we called at one point the LINE program for the Low Income Nutrition Education Program, or we most commonly recognize as the Eat Well program. So we lost recognition of delivering EFNEP through Humane Extension. But in 2012, or fiscal year 13, we no longer delivered SNAP-Ed, so EFNEP became our only federal source of funding to deliver the Eat Well program. And also knowing that our 50th anniversary was coming up quickly, we needed to start community recognition of the expanded food and nutrition education program. So not only did the community, our partners need to know, but also our organization needed to recognize that we were EFNEP and no longer the Eat Well program. So in 2019, it's 50 years later, and we are celebrating EFNEP and all of its accomplishments. So as I said previously, EFNEP does provide direct education to limited income adults with children and youth between the ages of 5 to 18. In an older version of the EFNEP policy document, it clearly stated that EFNEP worked with children starting at state cloverbud age, so recognizing the connection with 4-H there. Currently in Maine, we have 11 community education assistants who deliver EFNEP in 10 counties. You can see the list below. And one key piece of EFNEP is that we use hands-on experiential learning for participants to learn how to expand cooking skills, improve their diet, and ultimately share that information with their families. So I wanted to take a minute, and I'm going to introduce all of our EFNEP staff currently throughout the state. So I'll start at the top. We'll start in Fort Kent with Lori, and then we have Chris, who is in Holton, and then we have Rita working in Washington County. And actually, I want to back up too. I did want to note that Lori has been with Humane Extension and EFNEP for 23 years this month. Chris will be with EFNEP for 28 years in December. Rita has been with EFNEP for 1 year in January of this year. Deborah Sperling has worked with EFNEP for 23 years, so 24 in February of 2020. Lori in Penobscot County, while she worked for EFNEP previously, for Extension previously, she now has been delivering EFNEP in Penobscot County for over 18 months. Alice was hired in Somerset County, and in March will be her 1 year anniversary with EFNEP. Debbie from Kennebec County will have been with EFNEP for 8 years in December. Ruth in Androscoggin, Saginaw counties has been with EFNEP for 23 years, also 24 years starting in February. Eric has been with EFNEP for 11 years. Brenda has been with EFNEP for 23 years this month. And then Diane has also been with EFNEP for 23 years. So we recognize the excellent work that they do in the community, connecting with groups, ever-changing organizations that are trying to reach a similar population. So their work is constant and very impactful. And the next piece I wanted to talk about are EFNEP's educational priorities. Because EFNEP is a national program, there are 4 core areas that EFNEP focuses on for its direct education. Those include diet quality, food resource management, food safety, and food security. So we have those icons to recognize those 4 core areas. Although I fully recognize, I will say it's technically diet quality and physical activity. Could be seen as 2 separate areas, but we like to put them together into 1 core area. And the focus of EFNEP is to change behaviors. There is an increase in knowledge and behaviors, but what we really increase in changes in attitude, but what we really focus on is change in behavior of our participants. I did want to note that in fiscal year 19, Humane Extension engaged 560 adults in direct education, sequential education. That's important to note. So it's not just a one-time educational session. At a minimum, 4 different sessions, 4 to 8 different sessions for all adults. And we did work with over 2,000 youth last fiscal year. So to go through the outcomes, I'm not going to read them all to you, but they are really impressive when you think about changing in behavior. So all EFNEP programs use the same evaluation metrics. We use the same surveys with adults in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Texas, everywhere. So that adds to EFNEP's success, is because the program for 50 years has consistent program outcomes that it can report, and it's cohesive, and it again shows the huge impact that EFNEP is making nationally. So diet quality, looking at changes in behaviors. Specifically, we really focus on increasing fruits and vegetables and reducing sugar-sweetened beverages. It is important to note that these outcomes are all self-reported. We don't observe and then report, but they are self-reported comparatively pre-beginning of the program, comparatively to after the program ends. We also measure youth outcomes, self-reported behavior change for youth. It's a little tough for kindergartners, first graders, but our EFNEP community education assistants work very hard to collect that data and report that. So we can see that over 75% of youth can report their ability to make healthier choices when given this or that. So that's pretty impressive what they're learning when working with EFNEP. Food resource management, it's a mouthful for planning, shopping well, cooking, those skills that not a lot of people seem to do a lot, and how planning your meals, using a shopping list, comparing prices can really make a difference on the amount of money that you spend at the store. So you can see that our participants self-report comparing food prices more often, checking their cupboard before they head out on a shopping trip instead of buying foods that they don't need, they already have, or making that shopping list before they head to the store. Youth outcomes, a little harder. It's a little harder for kids to practice these skills, and we tend to do that more with our older youth, middle and high school youth, but almost half of them are improving their ability to make healthier choices when preparing foods and choosing more affordable options. Food safety, always an important part of the work that we do, ensuring that food stays safe to eat. You can see one of the largest areas for behavior change happens to be around not thawing food at room temperature. So that's a big component of the work that we do. Using a meat thermometer more often, we are able to provide those to many of our participants, and that is what makes that behavior more sustainable for them. Youth food safety, they're using better food handling practices. That's from washing hands, washing equipment, checking expiration dates and such. So the fourth component is food security. Food security is a little harder to quantify around behaviors. We do assess whether people report running out of food by the end of the month less often, but really it's those food resource management behaviors that improve food security status for many of our participants. The other piece that I did want to talk about is actually EFNEP's, especially in Maine, EFNEP's role in helping to advance best practices in community nutrition education. And by best practices, I mean helping to assist with research projects or collecting great data that we're analyzing. You can see a couple of examples here, state projects or multi-state projects. Going way back, Kathy Savoy had a grant from the March of Dimes called the Folic Acid Now Project, encouraging increase in folic acid of EFNEP participants. I've had some honor students and graduate students who've done research with EFNEP data or identifying better ways to collect the data of our participants. We do have some studies that have been published about long-term evaluation of EFNEP in Maine. Recently had an article published in the Journal of Extension in April about our long-term behavior change 6 months to 1 year post-program, and also the use of the Healthy Eating Index that we generate from our food recalls that we collect. Can we assess that EFNEP alone is is the reason why we have increases in dietary intake of our participants, and we can say that yes, EFNEP alone, no other factors really influence that improvement in their dietary intake. Additionally, we've participated in many multi-state projects. Dr. Adrienne White has always been a huge supporter of EFNEP, and we have actually participated in several of her multi-state studies, the Fruit and Vegetable Connection, I Cook, where we still use the curriculum, and some 4-H programs also use that curriculum. In Maine, we worked to help validate a national EFNEP evaluation tool that we use. So it's important to state that we've tested these surveys on our participants, and then also assessing quality of life after both employment and participation in EFNEP. So those are key components of the work that we're doing to help contribute to the evidence base of community nutrition education. Additionally, I just wanted to show the screenshot of our nutrition education page focusing on EFNEP. Here's the letter of congratulations from the governor recognizing EFNEP's 50th anniversary that's been taking place all of 2019. So that's what I have prepared for today. I'm curious if anyone has any questions or comments.
And thank you so much, Kate, for sharing that with all of us. I think it's important. And again, it was great as you were doing your people across the state. I was like, again, I know names and I know faces. And so I appreciate that very much. But we do have about 5 or so minutes. Does anybody have any questions, whether for Kate or on anything that I had to share? Certainly we're open to those. Certainly you can ask them offline too if you're shy. Although I've not met many shy extension folks in my last 6 months, so, which I appreciate. Lisa Phelps is wishing happy birthday, EFNEP. Great job, everyone. That's awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for connecting. I know Lisa's at NEA 4HA in West Virginia, so thank you for connecting with us. I realize I need to clean up my office because Kate looks like her office is, I envy, and I look behind me and I'm like, oof, doesn't look like how neat and tidy Kate's is. Feels like I've been here a lot longer than 6 months. If we don't have any questions, again, I don't want to keep people on. I always am aware of people's time and just appreciate the numbers that have joined us today. Thank you all for that. Thank you for your time. Again, I'll just be quiet for about 10 seconds, even though it pains me to see if there's anything before we sign off. See, it feels like a lot longer than 10 seconds. I look forward to hopefully seeing many of you, the majority of you, next week at the organizational conference. I know I had a lot to share earlier, so again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any comments or concerns or questions or ideas about any of it. Happy to answer them. And again, thank you all very much. It's been a whirlwind of a 6 months, but I still haven't questioned my life choices of coming. It's been wonderful, and just getting to know you all and getting to know the programs, and just what an extraordinary job that this organization does for the people of the state of Maine. So thank you all for that. If I don't hear anything, I don't see anything, we will bid you all adieu and hopefully see you all next week. Thank you again, Kate.
Thanks.